We often internalize this idea that trauma is some kind of psychological boot camp. That phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
But when we really dive into it, that notion feels, well, far too simplistic. Survival isn't quite the same as strength, is it?
It's really not. Trauma doesn't necessarily strengthen the foundation. It often leaves these hidden scars deep inside the structure of who you are.
Scars, yeah.
And these aren't just memories you can access easily. They're more like hidden blueprints that subtly dictate your emotional life. They shape how you anticipate pain or failure or even connection, often without you even realizing the original trigger.
And think about how much energy we spend trying to minimize the past. We tell ourselves, just move on, leave it buried. But it seems the past doesn't really stay buried, does it?
No, it really lingers. It gets woven into your adult choices, your reactions, the specific cycles of pain you might find yourself repeating again and again. And that's precisely why we're diving deep today. If you recognize these cycles in your own life, please know this. Your experience is absolutely real. Your history matters. You're not broken, you're not defective, and you are definitely not alone in this.
That's so important to hear.
It is, because the true source of strength isn't just surviving the original trauma itself. It's the resilience you show when you finally face those hidden scars, understand their architecture, and consciously choose to rewrite that internal script.
Okay, so let's unpack this with the right tools. We're looking at a framework developed by psychologist Jeffrey Young, maladaptive schemas.
That's right.
Think of these as like unhealthy thought patterns rooted way back in unmet childhood emotional needs. They're kind of the scaffolding that keeps us stuck in cycles that feel impossible to escape.
Exactly. They feel inevitable.
So our mission today is to identify 5 of the most common schemas so you can start seeing the architecture that might be holding you back.
If you want to build a life dictated by thriving, not just surviving, you first have to read the flawed blueprints of your current survival strategy. Makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Let's start with part 1 then, focusing on how we build our expectations. Schema number 1, disconnection and rejection, or as we're calling it, always bracing for heartbreak.
Ah, yes. This one's powerful.
So picture this. You start a new relationship, maybe things are going well, but there's this constant background hum of anxiety. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
A friend takes a bit longer to text back, or your partner seems quiet, and your emotional thermostat just instantly flips to disaster mode. They're mad! I did something wrong, they're leaving.
That immediate catastrophic leap right. From a simple delay to believing you're fundamentally unwanted, that's the schema in action.
Yeah.
It often forms when your caregivers in childhood were inconsistent, maybe critical, or emotionally distant.
So the child learns relationships aren't safe.
Essentially, yeah. They learn that connection is conditional, unreliable, painful even.
And then as an adult, that translates into this kind of emotional armor. You become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for any tiny sign of abandonment.
That's it. And we often connect this schema to what's called anxious attachment. That's where the person might cling really tightly, almost hoping to preempt the departure they feel is inevitable.
Sometimes the opposite, right? Pushing people away first.
Exactly. That's the other side of the coin, avoidant attachment, pushing people away before they can reject you. Both are different survival strategies, but rooted in that same core expectation of rejection.
Wow.
So in either case, the adult experience involves spending a lot of energy replaying past rejections or maybe constantly testing the boundaries in current relationships. Your brain is trying desperately to protect you from the pain it fully expects is coming.
So the key shift here isn't just knowing you fear rejection. It's understanding that the intensity of that fear is probably an echo. It's reflecting old wounds, old dynamics, not necessarily your current reality or your inherent worth.
Precisely. And the path toward shifting starts with consciously noticing and trusting the small moments of safe connection, rather than just magnifying every perceived distance. It's about retraining the brain.
Okay, that leads us to the second pattern, impaired autonomy and performance. This is the schema of doubting yourself, kind of on repeat.
Ah, the inner critic.
Yeah. Think about starting any new challenge, something you haven't done before. Do you feel kind of ready to learn and grow? Or does this deeply cynical inner voice just immediately whisper, you don't belong here, you can't do this, you're going to fail spectacularly?
That voice is so pervasive, and it often originates from one of two extremes in childhood, actually. Either growing up with constant harsh criticism where nothing was good enough, or, perhaps surprisingly, being so overly shielded from failure, so protected, that you never really developed a healthy sense of self-reliance. You didn't learn you could handle challenges alone.
That makes sense. You never built that muscle.
Right. And this is where we see struggles like imposter syndrome crop up, even in people who are, by all objective measures, incredibly successful.
Right. You hear about doctors, lawyers feeling this way.
Exactly. The schema tells you that any mistake isn't just situational like, oops, I messed up that one thing. It feels global. It means you are a failure, not just that the attempt failed.
Oof, that's heavy.
It is. And that's why this kind of self-doubt is so paralyzing. It doesn't just make you nervous, it convinces you not to even try. It robs you of opportunities, of joy, because you're stuck in hesitation.
But, okay, how do we tell the difference? Like, normal, healthy self-doubt, maybe feeling nervous before a big presentation, versus this really schema-driven paralysis.
That's a great question. Schema-driven doubt isn't just nervousness. It's more like an absolute certainty of disaster before you've even started. It's that voice saying, I should just quit now before I completely embarrass myself.
Okay, I see the distinction.
Yeah, and the solution isn't just telling yourself, be more confident. That rarely works long-term. The way to challenge this schema is through what we sometimes call behavioral experiments.
Okay.
You intentionally take small, manageable steps, try a minor new task, learn a very small new skill, and, crucially, you allow yourself to make tiny mistakes within that safe container. You're proving to that inner voice, gradually, that mistakes are just events. They're not your identity.
Shifting from that global judgment to just situational learning. I like that.
Exactly. It's about gathering new evidence.
All right, let's pivot now to the burden of self-perception. This brings us to what might be the most painful pattern: defectiveness and shame.
This one goes deep.
It feels like this heavy, isolating core belief. It's the sense that something about your fundamental self is just irrevocably wrong. Not just that you made a mistake, but that you are the mistake.
And that distinction is crucial. Remember, Schema 2, impaired performance, that says, I'm inadequate at this task. But Schema 3, defectiveness, says, I'm intrinsically flawed and ultimately unworthy of love or belonging.
Wow. Where does that come from?
It often forms from experiences of extreme rejection, maybe neglect, or constant harsh comparison in childhood. It's like you internalize this devastating message. If anyone truly knew the real me, they would run away.
And the shame itself then forces you to hide, right?
Yeah.
You build these elaborate walls to make sure nobody sees that broken core you believe exists.
Precisely. And research shows this hiding deeply impacts relationships. You might avoid closeness altogether, convinced you're unworthy.
Or the opposite.
Or, similar to the first schema we discussed, you might cling desperately, terrified that the person will eventually discover the unlovable truth about you and leave.
There's such a painful contradiction there, isn't there? The weight of the shame pushes you into isolation.
Yeah.
Yet what you truly crave, right, often stems from the original trauma, is authentic connection. The chance to just be seen and loved for who you really are, flaws and all.
Absolutely. And the sheer weight you feel. A lot of that is the immense energy required to constantly hide yourself. It's exhausting.
So if this defectiveness schema makes us hide because we feel unlovable, sometimes we pivot, right? We might try to overcompensate.
That's a common coping mechanism.
Like, okay, if I can't be loved for who I am, maybe I can be indispensable because of what I do. And that drives us straight into our fourth pattern, other-directedness. The people-pleasing spiral.
Yes, and this schema is particularly insidious because, on the surface, it often looks like kindness or generosity.
Right.
It's the pattern where your sense of self-worth, your feeling of being loved or approved of, becomes completely tied to how much you give, how much you sacrifice, how effectively you put others' needs way ahead of your own. You learned early on, perhaps, that your value came from your utility to others.
I bet a lot of listeners are nodding right now, but maybe also thinking, wait, I am a generous person. How do I know if I'm just being nice or if I'm actually trapped in this other-directedness schema? What's the real difference?
It boils down to the cost and the motive. Healthy generosity comes from a place of abundance, a genuine desire to help, usually without expecting much in return. It feels good, replenishing even.
Okay.
Schema-driven people-pleasing, however, often comes from a deep-seated fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, and fundamentally it's rooted in self-abandonment. You're giving away your core energy, your time, your emotional space, often feeling drained or even resentful underneath that forced smile.
That fear of disapproval. That's what makes it so exhausting, isn't it? You feel overwhelmed by the sheer, unending weight of trying to manage everyone else's expectations, and your own well-being just falls by the wayside.
Completely. You've been there for everyone else. The shift here begins with consciously validating your own needs and understanding that setting boundaries isn't selfish.
It feels selfish sometimes, though.
It can, especially at first, but it's actually a profound statement of self-worth. It's showing yourself the same care you so readily give to others. The first step might be tiny.
Yeah.
Identify one small need you've denied yourself this week, maybe just an hour of quiet rest, and claim it back. Prove to yourself that your needs are valid too. They're non-negotiable.
That makes a lot of sense. And it leads us really nicely into the final schema we're exploring today, in part 3. Enmeshment, undeveloped self. This one tackles core questions of identity and independence.
Right. Who am I, separate from others?
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever feel kind of utterly lost outside of your main relationships, maybe with a partner, a parent, even a close friend group? As if your happiness, your sense of direction, depends entirely on someone else's, and there's this constant low-level fear of being alone.
This is often rooted in what family therapists call enmeshment. It describes a family dynamic where emotional closeness is so intense it actually overrides the necessary development of individual identity and autonomy.
So the boundaries get blurry?
Very blurry. Your emotions, your decisions, they remain deeply tangled up with the needs, feelings, or opinions of maybe a parental figure or later a partner. You struggle to know where you end and they begin.
So essentially, you maybe never fully developed a distinct sense of self. You learned how to react to others, how to fit in, but you don't really know who you are when you're just by yourself.
Exactly. And as an adult, this can look like chronic decision paralysis. You can't choose a career path, maybe even what to have for dinner without consulting someone significant first.
I could see that.
It often manifests as this constant nagging need for external validation. Or sometimes, quite tragically, it means staying in relationships that are objectively unhealthy or draining simply because the pain of isolation of being truly alone with yourself feels too terrifying to face.
It sounds genuinely painful, feeling like your sense of self is lost in someone else's shadow. The key realization here, it seems, must be that while connection is absolutely vital for humans, your worth and your wholeness are innate. You are complete as an individual. Yeah. Your identity isn't just the sum of your relationships. That separate self exists, and it's resilient and capable of standing on its own.
Beautifully put. And if you recognize yourself even a little bit in any of these 5 schemas we've discussed today, please, please hear this final point. These schemas are not character flaws. They're not personal failings.
That's worth repeating.
Absolutely. They were incredibly sophisticated, even necessary survival strategies that your young brain developed to protect you from what it perceived back then as an existential threat or unbearable pain.
They were smart moves at the time. Protective.
They were. That's the critical reframe. The tragedy, though, is that those very strategies, the hypervigilance, the hiding, the people-pleasing, the blurring of self, are now likely the very obstacles holding you back from a truly fulfilling present life.
So recognizing them is the first step. Separating the past survival mechanism from your current self-identity.
That is the essential first step. Understanding the why behind these patterns is huge. It takes the shame out of it and turns it into something you can actually work with.
And healing is possible.
Right. Absolutely. It's definitely possible. It takes dedicated self-reflection, sometimes the structure and support of therapy, to systematically unlearn these deep-seated patterns. It's not overnight work.
No, it takes time.
It takes time and patience. But once you have the blueprint, once you understand the why these patterns formed, the how of changing them becomes possible, you gain agency. You deserve a life that's dictated by thriving, truly thriving, not just by surviving the painful echoes of your past.
That's a powerful thought to end on.
So maybe we can leave you, the listener, with this final thought to contemplate. You have already navigated the world carrying these hidden scars, maybe for years, and you've made it this far. That shows incredible resilience right there.
It really does.
So knowing you possess that level of underlying strength, what's one small, concrete behavioral experiment, just one tiny step you might be willing to take this week to gently challenge one of these schemas, to take that first step toward living a life free from that old, outdated blueprint